throughout Europe. Went from the whole continent all the way to the Europe, to Moscow. All right, they planted these types of seeds everywhere. Now, obviously, we know that Napoleon was defeated in Waterloo, but that doesn't mean you cannot defeat ideas. You cannot stamp them out completely, and these ideas will survive. Right after the French Revolution, there was a conference held. You're not going to be tested on this, but I'll just explain to you. It was by Prince Metternich. Prince Metternich in Austria set up a conference where all the monarchies came, and they talked about how to put toothpaste back in the tube, which is how do we make sure our system of governments, the monarchies are firm, and everything's going to be back like the good old days. You can't do it. You can't do that. You might temporarily do it, but it's not going to last. And I'll give you an example. The Decembrist movement occurred in Russia in 1831. Okay? What happened in 1831? Well, these officers in the military, the Russian army under the Tsar, rebelled against him, tried to overthrow him. Of course, the Tsar was panicked about this. He crushed the revolt with troops loyal to him. And from that point on, he established things like the secret police, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and became very, very brutal. This would eventually lead to things happening in the 20th century, such as the 1905 revolution, and then later on the Bolshevik Revolution, which overthrew the Tsar in 1917. All right? So we see these things happening. How about America? How's this all affecting America? Well, what happens in 1823 in America? In your American History 1 class, you probably learned that was when the Monroe Doctrine was issued. It was directly aimed at Prince Metternich and all those European countries, saying once these people in South America and the Caribbean get their independence, you can't come back over here and reestablish your colonies or under Spain or anybody else. You're not welcome over here anymore. And the United States will make sure of that. Now, could we do that? We did not have the power to do that. But we were depending on British help. And the British had already established themselves economically throughout Latin America, and that is called economic imperialism. Don't worry about remembering all that. I'm trying to give you this breakdown. But all of this stuff creates an unstable situation. And that gets us up to 1847 and 1848, when revolution breaks out all across Europe. Got it? Not Great Britain, but all across Europe, continent of Europe. France, Germany, everywhere. All these revolutions are put down very, very brutally. But yet, those ideas from the original French Revolution are still lingering around. 1848, what else is written in 1848? Does anybody know? What important document that is going to have a tremendous effect on the 20th century and on the United States of America? The Communist Manifesto by Karl Marx. Later on in the 1870s, he would write his masterpiece called Das Kapital. Now, all of these ideas are ginning up. Everybody's starting to, becoming radicalized, more radicalized as we go through the 19th century. Now, two things comes out of those 1847-48 revolutions. One, Great Britain is so pleased with its labor people that are working in Great Britain, that they're so pleased that they didn't have a revolution or they didn't have rebellions like all the rest of Europe did, that they give labor the right to vote. Now you would assume that labor having the right to vote is going to vote for all these quote-unquote liberal projects. Well, yeah, some, but basically they tap into imperialism as well. They are for it. Why? Because their jobs are going to be preserved by it. In other words, if we can sell shoes, if we can sell breeches and pants and shirts all over the world, we have more customers. To have more customers, we have to do what? Well, we have to have colonies. We have to have an empire. So in other words, because that's who we're going to sell it to. All right? So that brings you up to a period of time that you really start to need to pay really particular attention to what was causing World War I. In the mid-1850s, The first major cause, which you need to write down, is the Crimean War. The Crimean War was when Russia, who is Eastern Orthodox religion, says we want to be the representative. Now listen to this very carefully, because this is really not truthful. We want to be the representative and the protector of Christianity in the Middle East. Why did Russia say that? Now that's how you have to do a little critical thinking here. When I point to you, give me your name and answer the question if you can.
Ashton, but I don't know the answer.
That's all right, Ashton, but you get the drift of where we're going with this, aren't you? All right?
Can you repeat the question, please?
No. Got to stay with me on this one. But don't worry, I'll come back and give you another chance.
Claire, I'm not completely sure. So try to figure out.
Anybody want to answer? Jackson?
This is because they want access to the
Bingo! Bingo! There you go. Look at this map over here. This is the Mediterranean. Who dominates in here in the 19th century? Britain. Remember, they sunk at Trafalgar. They beat the Napoleon, and also sunk his fleet out in the Nile in Egypt. Okay, there's no competition. There's no other navies. Do you think the British want to let the Russians into the Mediterranean? No way in hell. Okay, so where's Crimea? Let's see here. Show me where Crimea is.
This is a little part of Ukraine down to the bottom.
Yeah, this is Ukraine right in here. You've heard of it today, haven't you? Heard of it? I would say Crimea is this little peninsula that sticks out into the Black Sea. This is what the British and the French and the Ottoman Empire are going to fight Russia over. As Russia moves down and expands into here, into the Black Sea, obviously Britain doesn't want to let them out into the Mediterranean. Doesn't want to happen. Doesn't want to happen. Okay? Now, there's a problem. Russia wouldn't be stupid enough to attack all three countries, right? So they assuming they have allies. Is that correct? In 1847 and 1848, those revolutions that I talked about all across Europe, one of them occurred in Austria. Austria, okay, is getting ready to be overthrown. The Emperor Joseph is going to be deposed by his own people with these radical ideas. But Russia doesn't want that to happen either. Remember, they just had their Decembrist revolt 20 years earlier, okay, where they tried to overthrow them. So the Russian army, under the orders of the Tsar, has marched into Austria to put down and save Emperor Joseph of Austria's throne. Now think about that. So obviously Emperor Joseph ought to say thank you very much and be really good buddies with the Russian Tsar. Is that correct? You would assume that, wouldn't you? What actually happens in this case? Once this war breaks out, Russia's depending on Austria to come to their aid and be an ally and fight on their side. The question is, did they? No, they did not. They did not. The foreign minister was asked of Austria after meeting with the Russian Tsar, was asked by reporters as he left the meeting, and he simply said, "We will astound the world with our ingratitude." Ingratitude because they did save the emperor's bacon 10 years earlier in that revolution. Okay, but they were not going to come to his aid in this war, in the war with Crimea. So, two things that you need to recognize about Russia. Russia doesn't necessarily tell you the truth. They go to war down here and they want a foothold in the Mediterranean, a place called, oh, by the way, it's called, same as it was then, Syria. Where are the Russians today? Where are the Russians today? Syria. That's exactly where they are. Remember, Donald Trump announced that we're going to be pulling out of Syria shortly? The Russians were tickled pink. All right. Just keep that in mind. That was 170 years ago. They're now finally getting out of this area and actually going to have a foothold here in Syria. Air bases, things like that. Changing the whole power structure of the Middle East. They also could hit all the way into Saudi Arabia, all the Persian Gulf. In other words, they could disrupt the oil supply of the world, I mean, especially of Europe, very quickly, and probably within a matter of hours. All right, let's go back. Crimean War. Russia gets their butt kicked because they're fighting three countries. They're fighting France, Louis Napoleon, yes, that's right, the nephew of Napoleon, is now the Emperor of France. In addition, they're fighting Great Britain, who wants to keep the Russians out of there, and they're fighting the Ottoman Empire here in Turkey. So, all of this happens during the Crimean War. Now, how does that affect World War I? That is your question. And let's go back to the assassination of the Archduke Ferdinand. Archduke Ferdinand, where was he assassinated? What country? Serbia, Sarajevo, capital. All right? He was assassinated by a terrorist group. That is part of the Austrian Empire. Okay? That country was. All right? Austrian Empire. So what the heck does Russia have to do with it? Oh, that's right. They're the protectors of all Christian countries. They're the protectors because they're Eastern Orthodox. So therefore, they have allied themselves with Serbia, and they believe in their separatist movement. Remember, they don't like Austria anymore because Austria hung them out to dry in the Crimean War. Extremely upset about that. So, once this happens, who do you think Russia's ready to come to the aid of? Serbia. Why? Not to help Serbia so much, but to get even with Austria for what happened 50 years earlier. In other words, that's an old card that needs to be played by Russia. They start raising millions of troops. 1 million troops is raised immediately. Another 500,000 is being raised almost, within a month as well. So in other words, that's 1.5 million troops. Who takes notice as a result of that? Who takes notice of that? Who is the great enemy in the 20th century of the Soviet Union, which is Russia? Germany. Germany, new country, established in 1871 after the Franco-Prussian War. Germany is now allies with Austria. So in other words, what you basically did was you redealt the cards. You jiggled up all the alliances. Austria is not the ally of Russia anymore. Okay, and vice versa. So Russia's got to worry about who? They got to worry about Germany. Because Germany is probably the most powerful country on the continent of Europe at the time. Their industrial capability, their industrial might. Okay? Who else is worried about Germany? I just gave you a clue about 2 minutes earlier. Who else is worried about Germany? And it's on its borders, the western border. Back, what's your name?
Josh.
Josh? Who's on the western border of Germany? Anybody know anything about geography? You look like you know something about geography. Come on, tell me.
I don't know.
Yes. France. Sitting right there. France. So, you got, and guess who France now is going to ally with?
Germany? Russia? Austria?
Russia.
Oh.
Russia. So in other words, they're both worried about Germany, so France is a natural ally of Russia. So in other words, this is a new game. There's a new game in town now. So here we go. We've got Austria allied with Germany. Okay? Now, we've got Russia and France realizing they've got a common enemy. Germany. Already in 1871, we had the Franco-Prussian War where France got their butts kicked. Germany established themselves as a nation. Now they're not Prussia anymore, they're Germany, the greater Germany. So, all of these things are called foreign entangling alliances. So, when Serbia gets, the assassination occurs, right after that, Russia says, okay, Austria, you're not going in there and punish Serbia. We're watching out for them. They're a Christian nation, we're not going to let you do that. Okay? Austria says, like hell you're not, as part of our country. That's our sovereignty. We are going out and take them down. Then after that, what happens? Russia starts raising troops to move in and intervene. Then Germany is concerned because of the millions of people Russia does. Russia doesn't have any nuances to their foreign policy. They just have a sledgehammer. Okay? So, as a result of that, now Germany starts to arm and starts to call their troops up. So all of this happens, and everything, the dominoes start to fall in August of 1914. Now, you ask the question, what does this have to do with the United States? Because this is U.S. history. You needed to know the background there. Because all of these countries that you see here, that part of the Austrian Empire, such as Serbia, such as Montenegro, such as Bosnia, all of those little countries out there are all part of what empire? Austria. Okay? All of them want their own self-determination. In other words, they want to determine themselves, and they want to be a separate country. As a result of that, it catches the eye of the President of the United States in 1914. Who is that? Give you another chance.
The president
Of the United States in 1914.
Thomas Jefferson.
1914.
I don't know.
What's your name?
Annie, I don't know either.
Raise your hand. Don't spit out the answer. Just raise your hand if you know who President of the United States was in 1914. I got 1, 2. Okay? Yes. Woodrow Wilson. What does he want to do? He wants to make sure that all countries have self-determination. They can decide for themselves. That's what that's called. Self-determination. To be whatever they want to be. Okay? Now think about that for just a second. Does any of these countries have a tradition of democracy? No, they don't. But Woodrow Wilson's going to give them that opportunity. Now, I want you to think amongst yourselves for just a second. How's democracy working out in some of these countries that we have went out and planted that seed? How's it working out in Iraq? Not too good. Not too good. Majorities usually take over democracies. So, majority Shia population persecutes the minority populations, whether it be the Kurds, whether it be the Sunnis, or whatever. So in other words, we got a problem because they don't respect the rights of the minority. Now that's just not, I don't want to pick on the Shia, because that happens almost everywhere you go, including Bosnia, including Serbia. Remember, they just fought a nice dirty war in 1990. All of these things are leftovers from World War I. So, how does Great Britain get involved in the war? Now, I want you to think about this now. How does Great Britain get involved in World War I? Who are they allied with? Who? Belgium. That's very good. So how is Belgium going to get involved in this war? Go ahead, Jackson. That's right. If you have a strong position on the other side that you're getting ready to attack, and that country has fortified their border, what's the best way to try to attack that country? You want to attack it head on, or do you want to find another route? They look for another route, which is through the Low Countries, Belgium and the Netherlands. So they do a swing. That is the exact same thing they will do in World War II as well. World War I and World War II. I mean, why run into a wall of fortifications? You're not going to do that. You're going to go around them. So Belgium. Now, who is Belgium? I mean, who is the king of Belgium? Who is he related to? Anybody? Yes.
Wasn't he related to
King of England. It's his cousin. So yes, they have a nice little sweetheart relationship. Okay? Yeah, and they're going to come to the Belgians there. And let me tell you something. This is what you need to understand about World War I. The British, the French, the Germans, the Russians lose an entire generation of young men. Not just tens of thousands. We're talking millions. Now think about that for just a second. There's 15 million people going to be killed in World War I. Now, that was a tragic situation. 125,000 of them are going to be Americans. But these countries suffered drastically. Drastically. So, let's take it a little further here now. So now we know how all these people got involved. But the real thing is that I want you to ask yourself is how did the United States get involved? Now remember, I've given you a couple of clues here along the way. One clue is what Otto von Bismarck said. Otto von Bismarck is the guy that established Germany as a power in the 19th century. And as he retired, forcibly retired, he was asked by a reporter, what is the most important thing for the 20th century and, for Germany? And he said, the Americans speak English. Now think about that. He says that before 1900. Does anybody take note of that? This is the smartest man in Europe. No, they don't. And they don't take notice in Germany either. But that's right, the natural relationship between England and the United States by language and other things. The United States wants to do what in World War I in 1914? What do they want to do? Say that again? We do not want to participate. We are going to listen to George Washington, who said, stay out of Europe. It's a cesspool. You don't want to go over there. He didn't say cesspool. He said it in a nicer way, but you don't want to get involved in those European problems. This is simple. Can you see what that is? Money. Who's going, we're going to try to make money. Just like we tried to make money on almost every war we've ever, we're going to send over supplies. Mainly food. Why is agricultural products and food products so important? Well, first place, where are your young men? And where are your men in Britain and France? They're fighting. They're not out there tending their farms. They're not out there growing their crops. Why? Because they need those soldiers. Why? Because they've lost over 1 million men, each of them did. You got to have them. So therefore, are they going to depend on their wives? Yeah, the wives do a great job in keeping it going. But they're not going to be able to produce what they need to in some of these small farms. So therefore, they're going to need help. They're going to buy it. And they're going to buy it from the United States. But they're going to need money to do that, aren't they? Who are they going to get the money from? Who lends them more money than anybody? Companies in the United States. Name the company that lent them the most money. Some of you are probably sitting on a credit card right in your pocket. I got one here. MasterCard. You ever read the names on there? J.P. Morgan and Chase. J.P. Morgan is a financier. J.P. Morgan has lent Great Britain a tremendous amount of money, and France as well. So in other words, you might say that J.P. Morgan has lent them the money so they can buy goods in the United States. And they do, they spend the money in the United States. Now think about this for just a second. What effect does that have on the United States policy toward Germany? Is it good or bad? We've already said, look folks, we will be more than happy to sell you anything you want, depending on if you're Great Britain or Germany or France or whatever. All you have to do is come and get it and pay cash for it. And then get your ships, we'll load them up and you can sail back. Think about that. Lauren? Is it Lauren? What are the problems with that? Would that possibly drag the United States into a conflict across the seas into Europe, which we've vehemently tried to avoid for over 120 years of our existence up to the time? How? What's your name? Kevin? Evan. Okay, Evan. What's your thinking, Cap, on it?
If America supplies one with food and resources that we can stay strong, still mess up everybody else.
So in other words, they're propping Britain and France up. Okay. How's Germany feel about that?
I wouldn't like it all.
They don't like it. So what does Germany do? They they try to scare America, don't go on the ship, put skull and crossbone ads in the newspapers, the New York Times, sitting there saying, do not take this ship because we're going to sink it. Lusitania in 1915. Here's the ad paper. Don't get on that ship. And guess what? They sunk it. 125 Americans or 125 die on that ship. Off the coast of Ireland. Everybody wants to go to war immediately in the United States. Secretary of State William Jennings Bryan resigns because he thinks that they are going to go to war. Wilson will be forced into war. He's under protest. We come that close to war in 1915. Thank God we didn't get in there. We'd have been there for 4 more years. We lost 125,000 men in less than a year. So, as a result of that, we don't go to war. Germany apologizes. Says, we will not firing your ships anymore. Therefore, we are not going to have unrestricted submarine warfare. The United States wants to ensure that we have freedom of the seas. Why? Because they want to make money. That's exactly what they want to do. Now, if you look back in your history, in American History 1, in 1807 and 1808, you mentioned Thomas Jefferson earlier. Okay? You're absolutely correct about one thing. You're absolutely correct. Jefferson had an idea of how to not get involved between Britain and France when they were fighting the Napoleonic Wars. And that was we were going to embargo them. Those countries, we're not going to sell to those countries. Of course, that means you weren't going to make money. And that means you're going to create economic hard times for all the people that made their money through trade, such as New England. It created a difficult problem. So we find ourselves in World War I where we try to walk that tightrope. Okay? We're walking the tightrope, try to be fair to everybody, Germany and all that. What's more fair? Hey, get your boats, come on over here, we'll load them up with goods, you bring the cash, we'll sell you the food, all the food you want. Germany can't get there because they don't have a navy. Britain has the navy. Only thing they have is U-boats. So, we see the dilemma that Germany has. But Germany bites the bullet and does not go to war with the United States in 1915, 1916, and 1917, the first part. But all of a sudden, something happens that changes everything. The people in Germany, the civilians, are starving. Britain and France are getting all they want. They get a lot of people killed, yeah, but at least their civilian population doesn't have a problem. At least they're eating well, furnished by the United States. So where do you think it goes from here? Germany either has to, what they call fishing, fish or cut bait, one or the other. You gotta do one or the other. Are you gonna go to war with the United States and cut off the supply line for Britain and France? Or are you just gonna sit there and slowly let your civilian population starve to death? Which is demanding, because they don't like the war anymore. They've already lost many, many loved ones. So the German High Command decides to, act against the United States and lift the unrestricted submarine warfare ban and start sinking American ships. 1970. And that is when the United States went to war. You also, a lot of people say, well, it was the Zimmerman note that did it. No, that's icing on the cake. The cake had already been baked. Free trade? We're for free trade. We are for making money. Okay? If you prevent us from doing that, we are going to take it out on you. If you sink our ships, we will declare war on you. And that made perfect sense to everybody. And it did. But they failed to understand the other side. What we try to do in this course is we try to, try to take a look at it from all sides. Okay? So when we get to World War II, we're also going to be taking a look at Russia. We're going to try to be fair toward them, at least during World War II. All right. Anybody have any questions on these? So what are your main costs of World War I? For the United States, unrestricted submarine warfare. Number one, which doesn't allow us to make money. In other words, we walked that tightrope for 4 years, made a tremendous amount of money, and then all of a sudden Germany pushed us off. Now we're going to have to fight this war. 125,000 lives, a lot of dollars. Okay? All right. Now, that's going to have deeper ramifications later on. And I'm running through this exercise for a reason. Because what I want you to do is I want you to think things long term. I want you to think, well, yeah, okay, this happened 150 years ago. How did it come to this way? I marched you up through this thing. In the last quarter of the 19th century, the powers of Europe, you have a new kid on the block in Germany. That created in 1871. From that point on, Germany is in competition with all of the European powers. They don't have an empire because they're late to the table. Just like Italy. Italy is created in the 1870s. They don't have an empire either. But this is going to have a direct effect on the United States' future in the 20th century. By not having an empire, Germany is going to try to get that empire, which would put them in direct competition with countries such as Great Britain. The scramble for Africa begins immediately. Okay? Let's take a look at this real quick. This area of Africa. Egypt here is British or French. This Algeria is French. South Africa was Dutch. It becomes British. So you've got British here, British here. You've got a Mediterranean lake here, which is basically British. They control everything. They control all the trade. Where is their number one colony in the 19th century? You might say it's the jewel in the crown of Queen Victoria. Where is it? Jackson? India. Now, look at this. You don't have to worry about anything and knowing anything. All you got to do is look at the map. India. British want to preserve that. How do you get to India? Well, let's see. Sail down here, we go down here, we come all the way back up here, right? But in the last quarter of the 19th century, what has changed? Let's try to build a canal. Where are we going to build that canal? It's called the Suez Canal, S-U-E-Z. Where are you going to build it? Egypt, right here. You go down the Red Sea, take a left, bingo, you're in India. You cut, it's a tremendous moneymaker. The French build it, the engineer does, but it's basically Britain's. All right, they finance it. So now you go around and boom. Now, what if you're Germany and you're in the last half of the last quarter of the 19th century? Take a look at this. You want to go to Africa. You want to go ahead and get you an empire too. Where do you go? Taylor.
Great Britain.
No,
Or
Great Britain is here and here. French is here. Belgium Congo's here. But where do you go if you're Germany? It's even written on the map. German East Africa. So in other words, they're going into Central Africa. But if you allow them to stay there, unchecked, the British do, that threatens what? That threatens South Africa and Egypt. And remember Anglo-Egyptian Sudan? The British are moving down here. The British are moving up this way, Rhodesia, after Cecil Rhodes. Rhodes scholars, things like that, diamond magnet. So in other words, there's going to be confrontation here with the Germans. There is imperial, a scramble for Africa has imperial competition between these countries. Now here's a good point. What did Otto von Bismarck say? Remember, I told you he was the smartest guy in Europe probably at the time. He built Germany in 1871. He did a really good job. He knew the problems that they would have in the future, but what does he say about empire? He says, look, we don't need an empire. German people don't. The only reason we even go out and do this now, like go to East Africa or go to some Pacific islands, is because we want to make the German people proud of us, proud of their country. So to be a world power, you have to have an empire. So therefore, let's give their stinking empire. But the interest of Germany lies elsewhere. Where is it? This is what I want you to remember. It lies in the continent of Europe. Now, as far as the United States is concerned, we have two world wars that are going to be fought with Germany. In World War I and World War II. Germany tries to do militarily what they have achieved in the last 60 years. Well, really 70 years already. Peacefully, without an army. How did they do it? They are an economic powerhouse. Today, if you are Belgium, or if you are, not Belgium, that's a bad example, Portugal or Greece, and you have economic woes, who do you go see? Germany. They're the ones that are going to bail you out. They're the ones that are going to give you money, and you have to do it on their terms. They are the most powerful country in Europe. Got it? So in other words, militarily they did not achieve that in the first two world wars, but they sure did it economically after the war. And we have a great deal to do with that. Okay? The United States does. So we'll talk about that when we get there. But all this is kind of laid out for you in the last 200 years. And your job is to try to piece it together. So you just hang on my coattails, and I will keep pounding away at this information. All right? I'm going to leave the world here now, but let's go through it just real quick one more time. Causes of World War I, Crimean War, okay, and the after effects. Imperialism, the scramble for Africa, check. Okay, militarism, everybody builds up their army. Nationalism, everybody feels good about themselves. Very nationalistic, proud to be British, proud to be German, proud to be whatever. Okay, nationalism is a very dangerous drink to have your people drink. You don't have to sit there and beat on your chest all the time. Because if you do, some bad things can happen. Okay? You don't think of it. Everybody's supposed to be proud of their country. Well, that's right. You are. You don't have to go around shoving it in somebody else's face the entire time. So all of these are major causes of the war.
Can you say them one more time?
What's that?
Can you say them one more time?
Sure. Crimean War, nationalism, coming with nationalism, militarism, building up your armies and navies. Okay. Sarajevo, the assassination of the Archduke Ferdinand. That was the last one, and probably, I'll go ahead and say it was a cause, because many textbooks will say the cause of World War I was the assassination. No, these things were already laid down. In other words, if it hadn't have been that, it would have been something else. That's the point. It was this. We were on this course, and it was a collision course. So these are the things I want you to remember. Now, I did not notice one thing. I did not mention radical ideologies, did I? That was not a cause of World War I. The Communist Party is in existence, okay, but it's a small group of people, okay, intellectuals at first. Okay, it's not around, that much. 1905, Lenin gets kicked out of the country after the October Revolution and gets sent to places like Switzerland. So he's over there writing and all that, meeting, with a handful of people, maybe 50 people. Not that big a deal. But World War I will give him an opportunity to seize power. So, no, not radical ideologies don't cause World War I. It's the old school that does that. The monarchies, these countries, that feel good about themselves. All right, you got that? Got them all? Okay. You will be asked a question. I'm gonna serve you up one because I feel so bad about your textbook. On your final exam, you will have a question on the causes of World War I. All the final causes are causes of World War I except, and you will pick out the exception. Okay? How's that? I think we pretty much went through that today. All right, anybody else have any questions on that? Let's go back to talk about the United States now. Now that we've got to say there's another world out there. Okay? There's another world that's going to affect the United States and how we deal with it. The United States is an interesting country.